I'm Tootie Tagerly. What most people know about me is that, like you, I was a design leader in my first career. I worked in design firms, startups, and big tech companies for 22 years. I was known for being fierce, driven, and occasionally a difficult person because I had strong opinions and I wasn't afraid of expressing them. What most people don't know about me is that I had no white space in my life. I didn't have time to slow down from my continual go, 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 busy, scheduled, overwhelming days. I wasn't able to make space to lead, to focus on what matters. I'm going to share my story and show you a different way. We're going to use the design process, the double diamond of divergence and convergence, to make space for you and your key relationships in the org. So this is me as a little girl. Isn't she cute? I had a lot of space then. I was inherently creative. I made up stories in my head, playing with my little strawberry shortcake figurines and Playmobil sets with a pirate ship and little treasure coins. That little girl would have been really good friends with Lona. Yet bit by bit, all the space and creativity that I had slowly disappeared. You see, I grew up with an Asian tiger mom. She'd given up her career to follow my father around as he got posted to different cities around the world. I grew up learning that I received love and attention when I did things well. Love was shown when I achieved, when I did well at school. I learned to be that perfect little girl who was seen and not heard, because little girls don't express their opinions. They keep their heads down, they do well in school. So I packed my days with activities, kept going on and doing stuff. No time to breathe, no space to rest and relax. The school uniform that I wore when I grew up in Hong Kong and attended a British school had me conform. I'm in the blazer, the little necktie, and I desperately wanted to belong. So I kept on this path of doing this. I kept at it. Go, 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 worked hard. High school valedictorian, check. Went to Stanford, check. I got the right jobs and kept climbing that career path. Speaking at South by Southwest, keynoting for the main big data conference when I was head of design at a big data startup and reporting to the CEO. I think I checked the diversity mark for that one. And then leading teams for brand new video products at Facebook. I kept achieving on the personal side, married my college sweetheart, bought a house in San Francisco. We had two beautiful, strong, and kind girls. What most people don't know is that I was running on fumes for decades. At the design firm, I was the only female creative director, and I learned to play the game. I took a command and control style of leadership. I was in love with my ideas and being the expert, telling people what they should do. I kept up this facade of a strong, confident woman of color in tech. I did well with clients, but I knew some people called me aggressive and a bitch. I kept going, but inside I cried, secretly knowing that I wasn't very likable. Continually overwhelmed with balancing work, crazy product deadlines, and time with kids at home, the only way I knew to go forward was to do more. I learned about ruthless prioritization at Facebook. It tells us to be more efficient, to keep doing, and to focus by cutting out things, even if it's difficult. It's gotta hurt to prioritize. This feeds into the punishment culture. Do more, feel bad, keep on going. Through it, I kept the armor on, and I needed to project a confident persona to the world. I worked harder. I ignored my husband, didn't spend much time with the kids. I was the woman who went back to work 4 weeks after maternity leave because they asked me to. I had no time for friends, no friends at work, more roadmap, more prototypes, more ideas, ruthless prioritization. I was continually overwhelmed and anxious, but I held on. I felt the pressure as I commuted 3 hours to and from work. Within the space of a year, this all came tumbling down, and I was forced unwillingly into a space of reconciliation of the life I've built. 3 large events happened. 1, my father-in-law passed. I'd known him since I was 18. 2, I got divorced from my husband. I'd been with him for 23 years, and we had 2 little girls in elementary school. And then 3, my father passed. There's a moment in time I won't forget. My ex-husband, Josh, was on the phone with me. He was down in LA at his dying father's bedside. And we'd been in couples counseling for about 6 months, working on the marriage. We loved our kids and the family unit we created together. So we're on the phone. And on the phone, he told me that he was done. He was done with this marriage. I had my armor on. I calmly nodded and said, okay, hung up the phone because I knew in 5 minutes I had a video call with my boss to give me my performance review. Video on, my smile on, my armor on. I was ready for this. And the instant my boss, kind, compassionate Charlie, looked at me and said, hey, how are you doing? I lost it. Tears were bawling. Everything was just like falling apart. And kind Charlie asked me, what do you need? And I said, send me my fucking letter. I need to know how much money I'm going to make. And poor kind Charlie nodded. He gave me what I needed and got off the call and he sent me my letter. And when I opened my letter about 5 minutes later, all my professional dreams had come to pass. You see, I'd gotten this promotion that I'd been working on for 3 years. I got a huge raise, a huge bonus, a huge refresher of stock options. And most of all, for the last 6 months, working in 6-month cycles, I got that coveted rating of greatly exceed. All of that in the letter. And I didn't give a shit at all because my marriage had fallen apart. It took me a couple of years to process all the events, to unravel my life, to grieve my fathers and my marriage, and to leave Facebook and the security of a corporate job in tech. But in that space, I learned something. I learned that I had the courage to jump into the unknown. I left the corporate world and started my own business. I'm a leadership coach. I've learned that I value people, relationships, culture, processes, everything that matters to design at scale and everything that the speakers have been talking about today. I value that more than products and ideas. And yet I'm a designer through and through. I believe in design thinking and the design process. That's the common thread. As designers, we help create North Stars for the products and move towards it. I coach like a designer, but I work with people. I help people find their North Stars. So let me show you how to use the design process to find your space to lead. Your daily routine like. Does this sound familiar? Wake up, kick ass, repeat. We can fall into our familiar patterns of life on autopilot. This is the system of Silicon Valley and working in technology. We're designers, we're gonna make people's lives better using our design skills. Yet whenever we become used to and good at something, it can feel like we're on autopilot. Work life, especially for driven people like all of you who are successful, can start to feel like an endless to-do list. Overwhelm, running from meeting to meeting, doing our real work at home at night, jumping from milestone to milestone, leaving a job and starting a new one at yet another company to solve another familiar problem. Proving that design has a seat at the table once we've gotten it. But where's the people in this story? Where are you in this story? So here is the most important point of my talk, being versus doing. In technology, we're used to doing things all the time. Meetings, to-do lists, roadmaps, milestones, get things done. We often have no time for the being. I'm going to share 2 stories with you. One home story. Imagine a family at home together on a Sunday morning. There's a dad and his 2 kids. They're doing chores on Sunday morning. The doing is the same. The dad is calm, efficient. He might not like cleaning the toilet, but he knows that it's going to make his life easier for the next week. One of the kids is a 3-year-old toddler. She is having a ball. She's got water, throwing them on the windows, washing. Maybe not productive in terms of cleaning, but the way her being is infectious. The third kid, 14-year-old teenage boy, he got his phone taken away by his dad because he wasn't paying attention. He is stomping around, slamming doors. He is not a happy camper. But eventually, with the 3 of them doing the same thing, eventually, maybe even that teenager kind of settles down a little because his baby sister, his toddler sister, is so infectious that he gets into it. That's the power of being. I'll give you a work example. Imagine a leader with 2 different critique sessions with your team. The doing's the same. We're here together to review the work, to make it better, to get it ready to present to the executives. In scenario 1, imagine a leader who feels like she needs to be confident, know it all, have all the answers. She shows up with high expectations, critical, and points out the flaws in the design. Other people pick up on this energy of being and they jump onto the criticism. I never went to art school, but I worked with many creative directors who did, and I was that leader many years ago. In scenario 2, imagine a leader whose focus is being supportive, learning, showing the team the way. She's encouraging, never provides the answer, but simply asks questions to better understand the rationale behind a design decision. The other people around follow this model of how to be in a critique. They're considerate, empathetic, helpful. In both cases, the doing is the same, reviewing work. The being is entirely different. Stephen Covey talks about climbing the ladder, reaching for success. That's the space of doing. Yet what happens when you reach the top and discover that the ladder for you had been leaning against the wrong wall? You forgot about the being. We're all designers here. It doesn't matter what title we hold. We use various versions of design thinking and this design process. In this double diamond, we diverge and we converge, and there's a bunch of tools we use. 5 whys, design principles, brainstorming, prototyping. Peter asked earlier today, how do you scale soul? His answer was humanism at scale. I love that. We can leverage the tools that we use on products and point them towards people, to our organizations, and first of all, to ourselves. The design process starts with research. If we ask ourselves, how do we find the space to lead? We look inwards and ask ourselves some questions. What matters to you in your leadership? How fulfilling are all the aspects of your job? I'm sharing with you this tool that I use with all my clients. It's a wheel of leadership to help you do research into what matters in your life. Basically, you look at all the segments and you ask yourself, how satisfied are you with each segment of your leadership? When I was in my midst of peak busyness, trying to work with aging parents and desperately fighting to save my marriage, this is what my wheel looked like. I was 100% focused on the doing part of my work. Starting at the top, opportunities for leadership. 9, I was given more and more chances to lead and succeed. High scores in personal growth, I was learning a lot. A 9 in money, I was making a lot of money. At the same time, I was working long, hard hours, doing a 3-hour commute and grinding in my go, go, go drive. I was dead low in energy and passion, a 2. Mission and purpose. At the time, I was working for Facebook. Each day as we went through the months of the Cambridge Analytica crisis, and we had internal discussions about how far we could go for growthy experiments. Each day I died a little bit inside and just didn't feel great about working there. Jumping to the bottom, my health was a 1. I wasn't sleeping. I was anxious all the time. This was when my ex-husband and I were going through intense couples therapy. Autonomy and freedom. This was a 4 for me. I had a lot of autonomy at work to make decisions and drive my teams. But ultimately I worked for Facebook, a company with a particular business model. And at home, I felt trapped in my marriage, knowing that we were a great family unit, but that there was very little romance left. And finally, my lowest score was relationships. My marriage was in trouble. I also wasn't telling anyone about it. I wasn't sharing my story. So I avoided my friends and family. I didn't want to answer their questions of what's up, how are you? Remember what happened when Charlie asked me that? I had no time also to make friends at work. But I didn't have this tool then, and you do right now. We're in the research phase of the design process, and pay attention, this is also the interactive part of this presentation. We're going to break some patterns right now. So take out a pen and a paper. Normally, when you're sitting back and listening in, you're in passive consumption mode. Now I'm asking you to join the exercise, whether you're listening to this live or on replay. Let's switch our modes of engagement and create some space to play in the middle of this conference day. You're going to make your own wheel of leadership. Take out a pen and paper and draw this. Draw a circle. I know you're designers, but it doesn't have to be perfectly round. Divide it into half, quarters, eighths. For each of the items here, ask yourself, What is your level of satisfaction with each area of your leadership? Because remember, what you can control fully is your level of satisfaction. I'll put you on a timer. I'll give you 2 minutes. If anyone has questions on this particular exercise, drop it into the thread and I'll answer it. But I will give you some time, and I can't play music at the same time, but I'll give you a little bit of time to fill this out. I think we have a tiny bit of a lag, and I will also come back to questions, hopefully with a little bit of time at the end. No need to do any math. We're just putting in numbers. We don't have to add them or average them. So as you're looking at this wheel, there's some questions that you can ask yourself. Might help you get to some of these numbers and assessments. All right, you can continue this on your own as well, giving you these tools. But if we go back to my wheel, in our journey to make space to lead together, we've diverged and done a little bit of research. Using the design process, we would converge in the double diamond on one of these areas. One of the huge mistakes I made was failing to make space for relationships. See that low score? If we were coaching together, I'd ask you which of these segments you want to make a change in. For this talk, I'm going to pick one, which is relationships. This is what the theme of today is for design at scale. It's humanism at scale. It's relationships, because people are the center of leadership. The people we design for and serve is the heart of design. In the space of being versus doing, I never had time for relationships. I was too busy getting shit done, but that's not the place of making space. Think about your relationships at work. You have difficult people in your work life? Can you think of one right now? Maybe it's a boss, a problem person on your team, maybe a low performer, or perhaps a cross-functional partner in engineering, product, or customer success. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I'm going to share 3 stories of how to really dive deeper into relationships and strengthen them. First one, people before ideas. So this is feedback that I've personally gotten in my written performance reviews. Aggressive and impatient, dismissive of bad ideas, feels like you're being interrogated. It's intimidating. You're too quick, confident, and competent in coming up with the right answer. I like to be right. I loved having passion, energy, and vision to see what the next phase of the product was going to be, to come up with brand new 0 to 1 ideas. I was in love with my ideas. I had no space for anyone else's opinions. I was completely in the space of doing. But that wasn't what really mattered. Instead, think like a researcher. Be curious about what people are focused on. Think about your impact on them. Focus on their emotions. Remember Matt's stories of empathy. Think of the white space around how you're making people feel in a meeting. The second story and lesson is to listen for the 10% truth. There's a piece of art that's right behind me on my wall. Most people who Zoom with me, not in this green screen situation, comment on it. Silent listen, it's an anagram. It reminds me to simply listen. Think back to the difficult person I asked you to think of. Yeah, they might irritate you and you want to vent. It's okay, it's normal. In the interest of making space and being, let's try something different. Think like a researcher and listen for the 10% truth of what the other person is saying. Use the yes and method of building on someone else's idea from improv. I'll tell you a story. I'm taking you back to last year. It was the end of May 2022. That first week of riot and rage over the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I was supporting a design leader in tech. She was leading the rebrand of the company's major marketing event. She'd worked long and hard for the new launch. The CEO of her company threw together an unexpected company all hands meeting, and he had a message. It was about her marketing event and its launch. He shared that he'd asked one of his Black friends, her words, if it would be appropriate to launch this rebrand in this climate of Black Lives Matter. His Black friend had said it was fine to go ahead with the launch. She was full of rage and fire at not having had a voice to be consulted. She was Black. It was her project. She was learning about this for the first time during an all hands. We worked together and she stopped and listened for his 10% truth. Her CEO cares about doing the right thing. He has a Black friend that he cared to consult. There was some diversity and inclusion training coming up soon. So yes, and she went to the CEO and she shared her reflection of the 10% truth. You care about doing the right thing. And then she built on it. She suggested that why don't they consult with the internal Black ERG, Employee Resource Group, to get their perspective. We agreed. I don't actually remember the outcome of the launch date, whether it was pushed or not, but that doesn't matter. She spoke up. She made the space to focus on the relationship, to listen for the 10% truth, and to build upon his ideas. Third story, the biggest secret to building trust with other people, it's vulnerability. Make a connection, share your story. It's what I've been doing today. Share what matters to you and your team. When I was working at Facebook, I was having some conflict and disagreement with the engineering director on our team. He had a growthy approach to getting as much work done as possible, and it was burning out designers who were doing countless iterations. On Facebook, we had just had a pulse survey. It's a company-wide survey that goes out every 6 months, and it asks things like, how long are you going to stay here? How happy are you? How you feel about the brand? Really a pulse of the company. I was deeply ashamed of my scores. The pulse surveys of designers on my team, there was one question. How often do you have the ability to do the work that you do best? For the whole engineering org, it's a roll-up, the numbers were public. The engineering team's numbers for this, how often do you have the ability to do the work you do best? 78%. Can you guess my number for my team, the design team? I was crying when I saw this. Their answer to how often do you have the ability to do the work you do best? 33%. Ooh, that was hard. But this is what I did. I took my data, my judgment of me and my team, and I shared it. I shared that story with this engineering director. And it opened up something. It loosened and it opened up something. He was able to connect and understand that, oh my gosh, these growthy experiments were burning out the team. They weren't able to do the vision, the concept, the blue sky work that they wanted to do. And that was going to impact us in our goals if these designers started leaving for other teams or leaving the company. Sharing my story with him helped us build a more trusting, stronger relationship when I was vulnerable. And it made it better for the team as a whole. Today I've shared some deeply intimate parts of my story. This is not easy, but sharing builds trust and it strengthens the relationship. So I'm at the end of my story right now. I've shared how to use the divergence and convergence of the design process to do research using that wheel of leadership. And then you converge to focus on something that matters. So right now we are in the experiment and prototype space, the space to take action, just one tiny step towards change. And this is where you continue that interactive exercise to apply the design process to make space for leadership. What is one tiny thing that you want to do? Did you find something interesting when you were doing your wheel of leadership? Is this an exercise you might want to do with your team? Or is there something you might want to try to improve a relationship? Yes, and listen for the 10% truth, share your story, take a step to embrace more space. Sometimes it helps to have an accountability partner. There's my contact information. Drop me an email or DM. Tell me what's one little step you might take. If you write to me, you will get a reply from me, not a bot. I'd love to chat more and hear your story. If you'd like to hear more of my story, my book on Make Space to Lead goes deeper into this process and it comes out this fall. Sign up to learn more. I'm also holding a 4-day retreat over Labor Day in Mendocino, California, in person, post-vaccinations. I'll help women, this one's for the ladies only, I'll help you take your own heroine's journey to learn how to make space. If you're interested, reach out to learn more. As for me, that little girl you saw in the beginning, she learned to slow down and trust her own leadership. I'm able to take off the blazer and loosen that necktie. I found the space for my leadership. So I'm done with my story for today. Join me in this movement. You too can make space to lead. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing. Oh my God, the vulnerability, the honesty, the advice, the moment to actually apply it. That was amazing. We got some questions. The first one is, what does opportunity for leadership mean? And that's from Sahar.
Yeah, so part of it, this is a really interesting question because I believe that you can lead from any position. An opportunity for leadership in the conventional side may be, oh, you've just gotten the opportunity to lead a project. You've just gotten the opportunity to volunteer to help with recruiting and interviewing. You might have just gotten promoted and you've gotten that title. So these are all opportunities to lead that a company might provide for you. But I also believe you can lead from any position. So you can go and volunteer. You could say, I'd like to write. I'd like to write a Medium post. That's leadership. I would like to jump in and help mentor someone else in the company. That's leadership. So these are all examples of opportunities for leadership.
Oh, that's awesome. And then another question is, how do you assign a number? Is there a question that we need to ask ourselves?
So the question is, and sorry, I missed that earlier, but the question is, what's your level of satisfaction with each of these quadrants? So it's what's your level of satisfaction with your opportunities for leadership, with money? So that's the example. That's the question to answer.
No, that's perfect. We've got a couple other questions, but I think we need to push to break. But oh my goodness, again, that was amazing. Like, no, you should see the chat. So yeah, you'll see it yourself in just a moment here, but truly, oh, actually, no, there's one more last question here from Andy. Good timing, Andy. Do you have any guidance for introverts who just have no aspiration to chase titles? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is being true to what matters the most to you. You're working, I assume, in tech. Why are you working? Is it because you care about the people? Is it because you care about the craft of design? The titles don't necessarily matter. It's that ikigai overlap too about what are you good at? What do you care about? What's useful for the company? And I think there was one more that I'm forgetting, but the titles don't matter. It's making space to figure out what your unique leadership is. It could be a quiet leadership. It could be a leadership that's crafts focused. There's a whole bunch of different options beyond titles.
Phenomenal. That was a really popular question. I'm glad I was able to ask it here at the end. But ladies and gentlemen, Tootie Tagerly, thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you.